and I will be speaking about Qaddafi and his crimes he has committed against humanity. Qaddafi has committed some of the most horrific and heinous crimes against humanity that the world has seen. He has led Libya into a country of fear and isolation. His reign is treasonous because it has allowed the degradation of Libyans and has taken away the country's wealth. Muammar was born June 7th. He is also known as Colonel Qaddafi. He has been the leader of Libya since 1969. He has led Libya into a country of isolation through his terroristic policies. He has led Libya into 10 years of suffering under economic and political sanctions. Muammar Qaddafi is inclined to use violence, support terrorism, and also dabble in weapons of mass destruction. He has one of the largest oil reserves in Africa, and this is the reason that he can leverage so much power through this country. Some of the crimes that Qaddafi has committed was the Israeli Olympic team massacre. This Munich massacre are events that occurred at the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, West Germany. The Munich massacre was a terroristic attack that occurred during the Olympic Games. There were 8 Palestinian terrorists who killed 2 members of the two members of the Israeli Olympic team, and they took 9 other hostages. And these are the 10 of the hostages that they actually took, and they're numbered in order. These are the actual photos from when the terrorist attack took place. They surrounded the hotel in Munich, Germany, and 2 of the members were killed immediately, and the other 9 were taken hostage as the terrorists were trying to flee. This is a helicopter. This is what the actual scene of the crime looked like after the 9 hostages were put on the helicopter in order for the terrorists to escape. They threw a grenade into the helicopter and it exploded. It killed those 9 passengers immediately, and this is the aftermath of what it looked like. In the corner, this is a picture of the terrorist who was actually on the balcony in Munich, Germany when the massacre occurred in 1972. This is the site of the hotel now. It still looks the same. Many of the features of the hotel have been unchanged today. The apartment still exists where the 2 were actually taken hostage and killed. There's been a movie done on the Munich massacre. It's called Munich, if some of you guys have seen it. And it goes into detail and explains how the event actually occurred, how these terrorists surrounded these Italians and took them hostage and actually threw the grenade into the helicopter and actually killed them. And at the end of this, all of the hostages were actually killed. And reports that initially came out said that some of the hostages had actually survived, but those were wrong because everybody that were taken hostage were actually killed. This is also Pan Am Flight 103. This is what Qaddafi was actually responsible for. And this happened in December of 1988. And the U.S. passenger jet was destroyed by a terroristic bomb over Scotland. It killed 259 passengers. It also killed 11 residents that were on the ground at the time of the explosion. There were 35 foreign students from Syracuse University who were actually killed because they were actually on the plane as well. The motive was revenge for the U.S. bombing of Libya in 1986, during which Qaddafi's daughter, 15-month-old daughter, was actually killed. So this was a terroristic attack that he ordered after his daughter was murdered from the U.S. airstrikes. The Scottish fatal accident injury actually described what happened when some of these passengers were killed. And it said that tornado force winds tore up the aisle, slamming into their chests, making it difficult to breathe. The force of the winds were so strong that it stripped the clothes off the passengers. Some were thrown into the rear. Other people and objects that were not fixed down were blown out of the aircraft into the night temperature. Some fell through the night, lasting about 2 minutes. Some of the passengers who were attached to the fuselage by their seatbelts, it actually took them 2 minutes to die. So they were actually thrown into the night air, still attached to their seatbelts. And if you can imagine being one of those passengers and it actually taking you 2 minutes to die, and you're realizing what is happening with you, this is a result, and this is some of the wreckage from this flight. But you know, some of us can kind of get in that mind frame if you've ever flown before, and when there's turbulence on the plane, your heart is already pounding. So imagine this, and it's taking you 2 whole minutes, and you're actually realizing, you know, what's happening and what's going on with you. This is some of the wreckage from the ground below. This is what the plane looked like after it was destroyed. This is after they took it to a junkyard and cleared up the wreckage, but everybody on the plane was actually killed instantly. This is Yvonne Fletcher. Yvonne Fletcher was one of the 30 officers sent to St. James Square to monitor a demonstration by Libyan descendants opposed to the rule of Qaddafi. And the whole protest was in response to the execution of 2 students who had criticized Qaddafi in Tripoli on the morning of April 17, 1984. So she was one of the officers sent to guard the students in protest of 2 other students who were executed just for speaking out against the crimes that were being committed against humanity. And she was actually murdered, assassinated. One of Qaddafi's members of his reign was in the window and actually assassinated her, and she died on the street. This is actual footage of her when they were trying to tend to her as she was dying laying on the street. Qaddafi was also responsible for the 1986 Berlin bombing. It killed some U.S. soldiers. This was a place that was frequented by U.S. soldiers. And there was a bomb placed under a table near the DJ booth that exploded in the club. It killed a Turkish woman and 3 U.S. servicemen. It injured 230 people, including more than 50 American servicemen. Libya was blamed for the bombing after some messages had been intercepted from Libya, and it was congratulating people of the terrorist reign on a job well done, and that's actually how they found out what actually happened. This is some pictures after the bombing had taken place. This is what the footage looked like after everything had happened and so many were injured. Qaddafi was also responsible for UTA flight number 772, and it was a flight that occurred on September 19, 1989. This plane was bound from Paris to Congo, Brazil, and Central Africa. It exploded over the Sahara Desert, killing all 170 people on board. The Libyan motive was said to be revenge on the French government for supporting Chad in the border disputes. 2 Libyan spies told the British intelligence agency that Qaddafi had personally ordered this attack. This picture right here of his family, this mother and daughter were on the plane. The son was not on the plane, but this is the picture of them in there when the children were a little younger. But as they got older, they were on this plane right here that was bombed. The mother and daughter died. The son, after finding out what happened to his mother and sister, actually committed suicide and killed himself after he found out what happened, during the bombing. And today actually marks the 14th anniversary of Abu Salem prison massacre of 1996. In the summer of 1996, stories began filtering out of Libya about a mass killing in Tripoli's Salem prison. The details remain scarce, and the government initially denied that the incident had ever taken place. There were 12,000 prisoners that had actually died. So between 1996 and 2001, they were denying that the incident had ever initially even happened. But a lot of families who were going to visit their loved ones who were incarcerated, for speaking out, simple crimes such as, one was a novelist who wrote a book on all the crimes that Qaddafi had committed. They imprisoned him, and he was in prison. He never had a trial. He never had anything of that nature. And so when families were going, they were taking their loved ones, food, things like that. The guards were still accepting these gifts, even though they know that these 1,200 prisoners, had been murdered, had been, brutally murdered. Human rights activists says that Islamic militants and political prisoners were massacred in 1996 at the prison. One of the detainees that were interviewed by the Human Rights Watch in 2003 said that the violence began when the prisoners were protesting about the filthy living conditions, about not getting humane treatment, about not having visits from their family. So they were just wanting to be treated fairly, and that's what the whole movement was about. That's what they were protesting about. The security forces moved hundreds of prisoners into different courtyards, and they opened fire on them with automatic weapons. It happened over 4 hours, and 1,200 people were killed. And they just lined them up, and they just murdered them. They just mowed them down, everybody that was there, and it took 4 hours. So imagine, you being one of those prisoners who is in this courtyard, and you witnessing all this, and this is something that you're going through, and it's taking 4 hours for them to murder everyone. The scenes and stuff, they said that it was horrific. They had meatpacking trucks come to this prison after all this had occurred, just to be able to get rid of such a mass quantity of bodies. These are some of the examples of the prison conditions. This right here is some of the urinals. This right here is filth, and it's actually waste. And this is what